Hello, my name is Matthew, and I just finished reading Cousin Betty by Henri de Balzac, Cousin Bette. Um, it's a different location. It's a beautiful day. It's Easter Sunday as I'm recording, um, and I'm in the backyard. You can see my tiny house right there. And I had the wonderful pleasure several days of flapping through the pages of this great novel by Balzac. And I do want to talk about this novel in particular, but also a few general terms that are important to me. So, Balzac is a novel that I've made a lot of lists and talked about favorite books and favorite novelists and things like that. And I'm not quite sure how often I've mentioned Balzac. And this is a book that I read in my early mid 20s. So it's been about 20 years since I've read this. But reading Eugene Grandet and Old Goriot and Lost Illusions and Black Sheep and A Harlot High and Low and all the short stories, Lily in the Valley, a really good handful of Balzac stories and novels. And every time I'm reading Balzac, it gives me that thrill, that feeling that I'm looking for as a reader. Just wonderful mornings and beautiful afternoons, just luxuriating in a novel. The pleasure of turning the page and being totally immersed in a story and having really interesting characters and plot lines that are developing and having really good memories of really good reading days is something that Balzac affords me. I often think about like Marcel Proust, who has this one great big book, and has that same kind of feeling of just the act of reading is pleasurable, and I just get that as more of like an abstract concept on top of many others when I'm reading Balzac. The fact that his novels are interconnected, so there was this idea of the human comedy, the comedy, la comedy humaine, and you get characters that are interwoven through all the different novels, and the more that you read him, the more pleasure and the more little things that you can excise out of the book, and you'll have clerks and bankers and doctors that will have their appearances, like cameos that you might find in a movie. Cousin Bet, Cousin Betty, is terribly interesting. It's almost entirely a novel of villains. There's just scarce few moments of virtuousness and good, as far as a characteristic that you'll find in the people in this book. They feel much more like people than characters. It's Actually, reading it for the second time, it's honestly almost perplexing that the title of the book is Cousin Bette instead of something else, because um, it does feel like she is lost in the shuffle of um, a story that doesn't have a main character. This is really an ensemble piece. We have really complicated family dynamics. With the other difficulty with me trying to talk about this book is the French pronunciation, which very much reminds me of the difficulty that I remember from reading Russian novels and trying to learn it's called the patronymics, and different family members would call the different people different names, and um, depending on your societal status, you could have a different kind of name, and if you're familiar or outside of the family. This book also has that, and it's a little easier because it's not quite so foreign to my ear or eye. Um, the difficulty is that I can't actually pronounce any of the names of any of the characters in the book. As I'm reading it visually, I know these people, but um, Cousin Bette, early in the book, has an infatuation for an artist from Poland who she becomes a maternal figure that also has a very complicated love interest. His name is Wencelas or something like that. Um, but cousin Bette is the cousin of the family of the Hulat family, and the paterfamilias, Hector Hulat, is this one of many depraved, deplorable, lascivious, licentious libertines that populate this book. It's full of um, characters that are just making every bad decision and doing so many horrible things. And these are aristocrats, people that have uh, positions or elected officials, and they're part of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of this or that. And they're very, uh, they're part of the aristocracy and the nobility. This book really does intertwine the history of France at the time. It's very much a naturalist or realistic depiction of the day in France. But we're following these principal characters sort of as a microcosm, showing the decadency of uh, the upper classes and the struggles and frustrations of the lower classes, and that conflict is what kind of makes this book. There's a strong influence in cousin Betty with Othello. Unlike Othello, it really feels like every single character except a handful are Iago. So it's just a big book of Iagos. Unlike Balzac's other inspired uh, book by Shakespeare, Old Gorio, if I'm saying that correctly, which is a modernized telling at that time of King Lear. Um, there are a few things that I think stay with me as I was reading the book and having this, wonderful pleasure of luxuriating over this book, I made, I don't know if you can tell, I had several dog ears as I was going through it. It is an ensemble cast, and the plot, in general terms, if I get the specifics, is very much like a soap opera or through the 20th century, the thrill of reading comic books, or I remember being a kid watching professional wrestling with my dad on Monday nights or whatever night it was, where you have like a very complicated, seemingly convoluted plot that is always kind of rolling and roiling, and you're dropped in. Is it? I can't remember the Greek term, but there's a Greek term for being dropped in the middle of a story, and it makes it so difficult to describe to someone that hasn't read the book, but it makes total sense in the moment as you're reading it. There's so many moving elements and different characters that are doing different things, and people have their motives and their ulterior motives, and passions and vices and virtues, and their wants, and all those sort of things are kind of like wrapped up in this book in a way that I feel like is impressively efficient. Like for the story that Balzac tells, as well as he tells it, this is a book that if you went to his friend Victor Hugo, it would take Victor Hugo 5,000 pages to tell the same story. There are digressions in the manner of Victor Hugo, but they are more intertwined. They are more easily recognizable to be digressions that are still moving the plot forward. And so we have a cast of characters. This Houlat family, cousin Bette, with a lot of different relations. The novel is sort of bookended with two critical moments that have tragic consequences. And basically, we have this debaucherous husband that can't help himself to have a mistress. So he is a married man running around town having affairs with very high-priced women, whether it's an actress or a woman of society. And there's a betrayal with two friends, and the friend of the husband who is betrayed through this association goes to the wife of this libertine and knows that his family is bankrupted through all of his debaucherous affairs. He's running huge amounts of debts, and he's looking for retribution. And it's this just cruel, gross, domineering, masculine oppression that he puts on this, maybe the one singular virtuous woman character in the book. Basically says, I, I'll pay you off in in exchange for sex. So, like an exchange of prostitution. And she says no. And the book carries on. Now, cousin Betty, she has her own feeling of or experience of being slighted by this same family, where she has this artist that she was taking care of. The daughter of that mother that I just mentioned is enamored by the Polish artist and um, has the story of love at first sight, and deceptively, through deceptive means, um, has an intrigue and ultimately um, marries that young man, which still has um, destitution in the future. And cousin Bet and this other beautiful young socialite get together to ruin all parties involved. And that's sort of where the story kicks off. Um, it's like maybe 100 pages where we get to a chapter and Balzac says, like, we've had our preamble, we've had our introduction, getting all of our pieces in order for you to know what's going on, and now we can tell the story. And it really reminded me of reading the Karamazov brothers, which is one of my favorite books. I've read it more times, many more times than cousin Betty. Where in the Karamazov brothers, it takes Dostoevsky like 500 pages to just to introduce the characters and the premise. And if I only read the back of the book, and it was this idea that cousin Betty was seeking revenge and was going after this family, and I read it only in those terms, I would be slightly disappointed for two reasons. One, like I mentioned, it feels much more like an ensemble cast. So there are large portions of this book where cousin Betty is just off stage, and instead we're following other fantastic characters. As I was reading it, I'm not looking forward to her coming back. Um, but then also the ruinous nature of this family. The characters are so horrible and so ill-behaved and so um, poor in their judgment and their morality and ethics and faithfulness, that it really seems like her and the, the the other beautiful girl, Valerie, they probably could have just done nothing, and the same ruin would have happened. Like it doesn't seem like it, their actions would have had a different result because they are so horrible. Um, Something else that I just mentioned Dostoevsky. Uh, with the Russians, it gets difficult with who's who and the multiple different naming structures and things like that. And there are similar veins in this book where we have um, cousin Betty, who might be cousin Bet, it might be the cousin, it might be Elizabeth, she might be known as the old maid, and all of the characters will have multiple different names depending on who's talking to who. It might be their position, it might be their relationship in the family, it could be how familiar you are with somebody, and at the beginning of the book, it can be confusing, but in the middle of the book and at the end of the book, it gets more and more rewarding because in real life, this is a naturalistic novel. In real life, the way that you address somebody really has a domineering effect on um, what kind of interaction that you're having. So if someone calls me Matthew or Mr. Matt or Maddie or Mr., those would all be different situations and would have a different way of a different feeling in that conversation. And this book does a really good job of humanizing the conversations that characters are having and the way that people really talk. On the page, straight away, it might seem confusing, but in real life, we all kind of call each other different things depending on the situation. Um, I'm so happy that I reread Cousin Bette by Henri de Balzac. Um, and I've now, I kind of want to reread Harlot High and Low, or maybe Black Sheep, or something like that. Dangerous Liaisons is something else that I was thinking about. But if you've read Cousin Betty, please let me know. If you have a favorite by Balzac, Lost Illusions might be my favorite. I'll tell a digression for anyone that's still watching this far. But I remember I was reading. It could have been a biography by Oscar Wilde, or could have been in his letters or journals. But he had talked about reading Lost Illusions uh, by Balzac, and there's a main character, Lucian, and there was some quip about crying when Lucian dies, and I hadn't at the time I hadn't read Lucian, so uh, I was interested, and I started reading Lost Illusions, and it was just fabulous. Just those days that I was telling you about, the pleasure of reading. But I get to the end of the book, and Lucian doesn't die at the end of Lost Illusions. And it turns out he's a recurring character. And there's another book, which maybe I won't specify to not spoil anything, but he dies in a different book. And so I just got to the end of a really satisfying book, and then had a separate element that made it kind of dissatisfying because I was waiting for this really emotional death scene, which was going to happen at a later date. So anyway, if anyone is still listening or watching, again, thank you for watching. Let me know if you've read Cousin Betty, or what you like by Balzac. Let me know what you think of My Little House, and please leave a comment if you would like. And thank you for watching, and take care.